Well, good morning. I'm excited to see you all here. Thank you for being here today in our panel discussion, Employment in the U.S., what you need to know. So my name is Trong Nguyen. I am the International Student and Scholar Advisor of ISSS office. I am one of the main advisors in the office, handle advising in general for F1, J1 students population, and our UA scholars who are on UA OPT and STEM OPT. But my major role is to advise students on matters related to student work and work authorization. Well, I was once an international student, so I used firsthand the challenges of, like how to prepare my resume, how to sell myself with the employers, how to navigate, like the immigration rules and regulations and make the best out of it. So whether you are going through that phase or you are thinking of like you going to that phase sometimes in the future, we hope that this panel discussion will address the questions and the concerns that you have, and ease you in the process of looking and finding your dream job. So with that, I would like to give a chance for our panelists to introduce themselves. Could you please introduce yourself and what office you are from?
Good morning. My name is Amy Ratliff, and I am the director of the Engineering Career Development Center in the Co-op program, and excited to be here today.
Hi, everybody. I'm Amy Bramlett, and I am the manager of the satellite office for the Career Center in Communication Information Sciences, and I'm also glad to be here.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Neil Adams. I serve as the Assistant Director of the Cooperative Education Program in the Engineering Career Development Center.
And we've got a few other staff here with International Student Scholar Services. If you don't know me, I'm Charter Morris. I'm Director of International Student Scholar Services here. And I was going to let Sade and Bethany introduce themselves.
Hey, I'm Bethany Lee. I'm the Sponsored Student and Services Assistant. Today I'll be helping monitor the chat and help answer your questions.
And hi, I'm Sade Smith. I'm Students Coordinator at International Student and Services. International Student and Scholar Services, and I'll be assisting Bethany as well with monitoring the chat.
Yeah, so just so you know, we have the chat open. So if you have questions, you can submit your questions in the chat. We may or may not have enough time to go through all of your questions, but our goal is to address all of them or as much as we could. You are also encouraged to contact us or email our office if you have specific questions related to your case. Okay, so why don't we start it off with some questions for co-op office. What is co-op program and how does it work?
I'm going to actually let Neil answer that because he is definitely responsible for recruiting a lot of those students.
Yeah, so the co-op program is a formal academic program here at the Capstone, and our mission is to provide ways for students to gain full-time professional experience. And the difference between co-op versus some other ways that you might think of in order to gain experience is that it is full-time and it's going to comprise 3 semesters of work. So when it's all said and done, you'll have gained professional experience for the duration of a year with an employer. And so it's a great way to increase the breadth and depth of your experience as you are looking to get your career started even while you're enrolled as a student.
Awesome, thank you. Is co-op program the same with internship? Will co-op program help me find an internship or do I do it by myself?
I'll be glad to answer that. The co-op program is, as Neil said, a formalized program. We do have recruiting events throughout the year. where we have a fall and a spring co-op interview day. And that is an opportunity for students to go through the formal application process, interview with companies who have expressed interest in that formalized program. So we do assist with that. In regard to internships, and Amy may want to piggyback off of this as well, those are often found through our fall or spring career fair, or possibly on the student's own account. And really with co-op and internships, I always say there's no opportunity that we can't work around and work with. So a lot of people say, you know, an internship is summer only. Well, that's not necessarily true. I mean, internships can take place in fall, spring, or summer. The difference in an internship and a co-op is a co-op expects you to make 3 commitments. I mean, a 3-semester commitment. So you are going into it with the understanding that you're going to work a total of 3 semesters. An internship experience, you go into that, it's a little bit less committal as far as the relationship between the university. You can certainly find that on your own. You can facilitate that on your own and go through that process as far as finding the opportunity.
I would just add to depending on what academic major you're in, you may have an internship coordinator that would work really closely with you to both help seek your internship and make sure you get academic credit if that's something that's required as per your degree.
Well, the next questions I have is for Amy Bramlett, UA Career Center. Students say, I don't know what kind of assistance I could get from UA Career Center. Could you provide some details? I am a PhD student. Could I seek assistance from UA Career Center, or is it more for undergraduate students only?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think of the Career Center as that place where you go when you're ready for a full-time job, when you're leaving UA. I really encourage everybody here today to think of it on the broad spectrum of career. So we see freshmen through graduate school and even our alum as well. So your entire spectrum of your career is covered by the Career Center. At least speaking for the main office. And so yes, if you're a PhD student, you certainly could come in. And it's the obvious stuff, you know, it is resumes, cover letters, networking, our events that, like our career events, both info sessions and career fairs and other types of things. But it's also stuff like preparing your personal statement, preparing for an interview, making sure that you have researched your major and you know what kind of options there might be. Salary negotiation is a big one that we don't get utilized a lot for, but is a very confusing process that I think we could offer services for. And pretty much everything else in between. So if it pertains to your career, your future job options, at least, you know, shoot us an email or call if you wonder about it. The one thing that we really don't do is academic advising. So we can't advise you on, you know, what classes you need to take to make sure that you are, you know, finishing your degree on time. But we can look at your classes in terms of your interest and the transferable skills that it might bring to you. And how that might contribute to career outcomes. So I hope that kind of covers it. If Amy and Neil want to add anything too, they know a lot about it as well.
I think you covered it well.
And it's just very interesting to know that even our alumni can seek help from it. So like if students just like freshly graduate and, you know, like need a little brush up on their resume, you can still seek help from your office. That's one.
That's right. Yeah. And if you career change at any point in your life, if you're, you know, 53 and you decide you want to look at something different, we serve our alumni for life. So
that's terrific. Well, the next question is about OPT and STEM OPT. And I should be able to take that on. So the question is how to apply for OPT. How early do I have to start the process of applying for OPT? Does an economics major from Coble House County stand for OPT purposes? Well, first of all, if you don't know, OPT stands for Optional Practical Training. It's a 12-month work authorization for students either before or after they complete their program. It's more common to use after the students have completed the program, but it's actually available for either before or after. And how to apply for OPT? Well, first of all, you need to determine whether you're eligible or not. Well, you have to be an F1 student. You must have enrolled in at least 2 full academic semesters before you're eligible. You must be pursuing a degree program, meaning that you're in a bachelor, a master, or a PhD program. ELI students are not eligible for OPT. And your intent to work in positions that are directly related to your major. So if you're eligible, then the process usually starts with your submit an application to our office. The application is available on our website. And once we receive your application, we review it, and if you meet all of the eligibility requirements, we'll make a recommendation in your CVS record and print out an UI-20. And this, along with all of the supporting documents and the forms that you complete, you will file your application with USCIS. Once you file, you'll wait for approximately 3 to 5 months, and if your case is approved, then you have the work authorization or your OPT. Then that EAD or that card, is your work authorization. Currently, economics is not listed as one of the STEM major. This may change. I probably will let you.
I can address that. So there in business school, in CBA, there are not many majors that qualify as STEM degrees according to Homeland Security. And but there are a few programs. One of them, operations management, for instance, is one of those programs. There's one of the statistics programs that falls into that area too. The economics program, as it's listed with the Alabama Commission on Higher Education through the university, our SIP code, the code that's associated with economics, is not one of the STEM eligible SIP codes. It's not a major that Homeland Security recognizes. I understand that there has been a proposal to redesignate that to a very similar area related to economics, and that would then qualify it for STEM eligibility. That has to go through an approval process, beginning with the college, the registrar's office, the provost, the board of trustees, and then the Alabama Commission of Higher Education has to ultimately approve that. I understand it is on their agenda, but I'm not sure how far along it is in the process. So whereas right now it doesn't qualify, it could potentially in the future qualify if those are approved. But it's a very different, a very complicated process, and it's one that I know that may seem as simple as making a change, but it really does have to have many levels of approval before any kind of major change happens like that.
Thank you, Charter. The next 2 questions are actually for you. How does the TN special visa for Mexico work?
Mm-hmm. So I'll start with that. So a lot of students, so if you don't know about me, I've worked with international scholars and faculty for many years. That's actually been the largest part of my career, is working more with employment visa categories. And when you are seeking work after graduation, many students on F1 visas begin with optional practical training, but then they transition to some sort of other work visa category. It may be an H-1B, which is the most common work visa category, but it could be that you qualify potentially under other visa categories, a lot of trade treaty categories. So TN is a specialty trade treaty visa category. It stood for the trade NAFTA. NAFTA agreement recently changed. It's now the USMCA, so that's the US-Mexico-Canada agreement. And so the USMCA includes the United States, Mexico, and Canada. And if you are a Mexican or Canadian citizen, you may potentially qualify for a TN visa to be able to work in the U.S., but it's really specialized. There's a narrow list of job categories that qualify for TN visas, and you have to be working in that profession. So it's not a blanket visa category that all Canadians or Mexicans can qualify for. You have to have the specialization and the degree requirement and come to work in that field. So for instance, instructors and faculty fall into that category. There is a category for teaching at the post-secondary level at a university or college. One of the TN limitations is, though, it cannot be for permanent employment. Now, it could be for ongoing renewable employment. In fact, there's no ultimate cap, which is one of the best things about this. So if you've got a staff position like mine that's just continuous, but is maybe not a permanent position, is not guaranteed a permanent position, then you could continue to work in that position and have renewals of the TN. More or less, you just have to look at whether or not your job qualifies and whether you hold the credentials required for that. We actually have a really, really good section on our website about the TN visa as it applies to employment at the university. And you can look at that because I've got some links back to the resources from the government about what qualifies, and you can see where you want to go with that.
Thank you, Charles.
Mm-hmm.
If a company processes an H-1 visa for my husband, am I also allowed to work?
Not automatically. The H-1B is the primary visa for work, and dependents of H-1Bs can qualify for the dependent visa category called an H-4. The H-4 visa is not on its own allowed to work. However, there are possibilities that an H-4 visa applicant can apply for work authorization if they and their H-1B spouse, a husband or wife, whoever holds the H-1B, they have been sponsored for a permanent residency for green card, but are in a backlog category. So for if any of you have looked at all at green cards, you'll know that some countries there's huge backlogs. You can start the green card process and it may be years and years before you'll ever be able to actually get your green card. And in those cases where you're backlogged, you've gotten the sponsorship, but you can't finish everything and you're stuck in kind of a limbo, they've got this exception for H-4 visa holders to be able to apply for work authorization in that very limited circumstance. So it's not automatic, but there are possibilities that you can qualify. On our H-1B page, we have for employment at the University of Alabama, there's a section at the very bottom for H-4 dependents, and it talks about this circumstance. Now, please keep in mind, we're advising from the perspective of one of our employees and their dependents, but that information may help you as you're kind of figuring out what options you have.
And also kind of like add on to Charles' response is that, if you are a dependent, you may have an H4, but in many cases where I see, you know, like the wife actually changed the visa status from a dependent to like an independent visa holder, like an F1 if you're studying in the US. And well, you will have to subject to all of the rules and regulations for F1 students, but then you'll get the benefit of an F1 student that you can apply for OBT and STEM OBT if you're eligible for it as well. So you have a husband, but you know, you may have the option, depending on your situation, to be on your own independent visa. The next question is for co-op office. Well, some of it's already addressed, but the question is how to participate in co-op program. How hard is it to get work permit and get into a co-op program? Can I have an internship before I graduate? Yes, I guess. And how long the internship can be?
I'll go ahead and speak to the process of applying for the co-op program. So we actually have a web application to apply for the academic program itself, which would allow you to participate in some of our recruitment events, like Amy Ratliff mentioned, you know, interview day and some of the other events that take place. Our online application is on our website, and I'll type that in the chat here. And we look for a few key criteria. We look for students to have at least 12 UA hours and to have at least a 2.5 UA GPA. And through the process of applying for the program, again, you would be you know, checked for academic eligibility for the co-op program, but then also each company that participates, they have their own criteria as well. And so that would, you know, correspond with major GPA. In addition, work authorization sometimes is, you know, something that companies are looking for. So it's really simple to apply for the program, and through that, we are going to be able to provide support for you as you go through the job search. And again, that would be for full-time experience for the duration of 3 semesters versus when you think of just an internship, it would be, you know, either for, you know, like a summer time frame or a single semester time frame. And all of our co-ops are paid. Our average hourly rate comes out to $18.89 per hour, just as a reference point.
Awesome. The next ones are for UA Career Office. Could you suggest where to look for jobs? What are the initial steps we have to consider when we start to apply for jobs in the US?
Yes, so I would really highly recommend checking out Handshake. If you haven't checked that out, you can access that via the Career Center web page, or you can go to My BAMETS under the Student tab. And that is our database for full-time jobs, part-time jobs, and internships as well. Many of them are remote, and you can find out, you know, locations or remote status. You can even look to see, you know, what kind of requirements the job has in terms of, you know, whether they accept different types of, you know, visas and things like that, or would sponsor you. I guess we say visa-friendly employers. And that's where I would start, but I also would really recommend sitting down with the career consultant from your college and just strategizing, brainstorming with them to discuss how you might get started. Of course, if you don't have a resume, that's a great start, but it would just depend on where you are, and we could assess that with you and then move forward at your pace from where you are and what your program looks like. So I think that would be my advice with that.
And Amy, thank you for bringing that up. One of the questions we had early in the chat was how to find companies that would actually hire an international student, whether they be on OPT or may require sponsorship. There is another question that came in the chat, very similar to that, about that job application question. Will you now or in the future require visa sponsorship? How should somebody answer that question?
Okay, so if it's on the job application, you must answer it accurately by law. So that's what I would recommend. However, I think the great thing about a lot of the events that we do, and that Amy and Neil mentioned, they're in person, or at least virtually in person nowadays. And having a conversation with a representative from a company, to me, if you are going to need sponsorship, is going to be, highly preferential to just filling out 100 applications online where you have to mark that you might need sponsorship in the future. You can explain your qualifications, you can show them your personality, your willingness, your passion for the field. And to me, that gives so much more weight, that could then carry you on through hopefully the interview process and help facilitate an application that might be a sticky, like a little bit of a sticky situation, depending on how they ask that question that Charter just talked about. What would you add anything, Charter, anything you'd recommend there?
And I agree with you completely. You have to answer yes. It makes it hard on faceless applications to be considered. There's usually a corresponding question, or sometimes a different question that I see. I think even in the University of Alabama's application form, it asks whether or not you will have work eligibility on the day that you begin work. And in those cases with OPT, you can say yes, because you're going to have independent work authorization. Now, in the future, you may need a sponsorship, but at least initially, you're going to have work authorization that would allow you to begin work. There was a question that also came up about that, and Trong, I wanted to kick that to you, about the wait times to get OPT, considering that you can only apply for OPT 90 days in advance of graduation. If it's taken 3 to 4 months or maybe even longer to get OPT approved, does that mean that there might be a possible gap or a wait after graduation before you can begin work?
Yes, absolutely. Well, you get the issue here. You can only file for OPT up to 90 days prior to the completion date of your program, but the application process may take anywhere from 3 to 5 months. So yes, there's a possibility that there may be a gap there, and you are not allowed to work until you have that physical card in your hand. So that's why we did our best effort to give students information about OPT and encourage you to apply and plan it out as soon as possible, just so that the gap may be minimized. Usually when you file early, at least from my experience, you can avoid what we call the peak season with USCIS. Like if you're graduating in May, you apply in May, you're applying with hundreds, thousands of other students, international students in the US, and their resources will be tied up. It will take longer to get to your application, but you plan it out and apply 3 months earlier when most of the students are not really think about it yet. Your chance of getting it out is a little bit higher. So we can't control how USCIS or how long it will take, but we can control when you submit that application. Right. I just want to circle back on the previous questions about whether you need work authorization in the future. I would say yes, if indeed you will need work authorization. This may or may hurt the chance of getting interview, but in the end, if you need it, would you want to waste your only chance of trial period, like that 12 months to prove with your employer that you're worthy and you're a good employer so that they can sponsor your H-1B? But if you tie that 12 months up with somebody who has no plan or have no resources to sponsor that H-1B, it's like, well, you lose your chance of getting that out to somebody who actually can sponsor you for H-1B. And it doesn't mean that you won't get, hired, because I've worked with so many students who were hired by employers who have no clue what OPT is, what H-1B is. And they got in touch with me and they learned about the whole process. That, well, you know what, I've never hired an international student. Walk me through this process. And they hired this particular international student and they filed for that H-1B. So don't be scared of telling the truth if that's what you need in the future.
You know, I was going to piggyback one more thing, and to agree, I think anytime you're asked a question like that on an application, you need to be honest and forthcoming. The last thing you want to do is spend a lot of time on a company that is not going to invest back in the entire process. And with recruiting, and I think Amy Bramlett would say this too, a lot of it is about strategy. So narrowing your focus on those that you know are within that realm of possibility, you'll be able to focus your efforts a lot more strongly to be able to get in front of them, network, and do all those things, as opposed to having kind of a diluted search where you may be applying for any and everything. So definitely be honest and forthcoming on the front side.
Yep. Thank you, Amy. The next question is for Amy Bramlett. Appearance is important for an interview, but it's so expensive to buy suits or night clothes. Do you have any suggestions?
I do. I think there are a lot of ways that you can get very reduced prices or sometimes free. We do have the Crimson Closet at our Career Center. The operations have obviously been affected by COVID, but if you're a person who really, that's a need of yours, I would recommend still contacting us just to see if there's anything that we could do. And what Crimson Closet is it is a really neat little space up in the 3rd floor of the Ferg where we have lots of actually new items and then gently used donated professional clothing that you can come and take for your interview and or professional dress needs and then return. So that's something that's free. Something that we also, I don't do a very good job of this, but when you go to a store and you're purchasing something in Tuscaloosa, ask if they have a student or faculty staff discount because many of them do, and I just don't think we take advantage of that like we could. Also, we work before the career fairs with JCPenney on an event we call Suit Up, where you get a really big discount on professional clothing. So there are a lot of options there, and that's not even to mention we have some wonderful consignment stores in Tuscaloosa, really great thrift stores as well with some amazing items. So I would recommend definitely checking out all those options before you put down a large amount of cash on a suit for one interview.
Oh, well, that's wonderful to know. I didn't even know about Crimson Closet services, which is great. So, but this is legitimate concern, well, you're investing in this interview whether you don't know whether you get it or not, and shell out like $400 or $500 for suits is quite a major investment for students, especially international students. So yeah, well, thank you for the suggestion, Amy. The next question is about STEM OPT. For STEM OPT programs, how does the OPT work? Is it 1 year with the possibility of an extension? What are the differences related to OPT between a STEM and a non-STEM student? So STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. If you look on your I-20, there's a zip code, and that is the designated code of your major. And if this major is on ISSSS list of eligible STEM fields, then you are in the STEM major. STEM OPT, so regardless of what major you are in, most of you are eligible for OPT. Well, well, not most of you, but well, if you meet all of the eligibility requirements, you get OPT for 12 months. And for students who are on STEM OPT major, towards the end of that OPT, you may submit an application to get the extension. And this extension is for additional 12 months on top of the 12 months of regular STEM OPT. So that's the difference between the STEM and the non-STEM. Also to address one of the questions that does it cost anything from the employer side to host or to hire an international student who on OPT and STEM OPT. So OPT and STEM OPT is your F1, is the benefits of your F1 student status. So you are the petitioner of these applications. There's no sponsorship requirement from the employer side. So if you are approved, you can work in jobs that meet the requirements for these OPT and STEM OPT. But for OPTs, period, there's nothing the employer has to do in additional with any other regular hire. For STEM OPT, they has to complete a training plan. Basically, they agree to train you for this 24 months, and they have to specify what the goals of your position is, you know, like what the objectives that they're trying to, they want you to achieve, how they're going to evaluate and measure your performance and stuff like that. But essentially, it's still your petition, and is that there's no sponsorship required from the employer. Okay, well, the next question is for charter. How does an international student obtain work authorization after graduation? Well, I think this question has been addressed. You can use OPT and STEM OPT. Well, I am married to a US citizen. Will that affect my work authorization process?
Yes, in good ways, potentially, or not at all. So not everybody's going to get married to an American, but one of the benefits of marriage to a U.S. citizen is it is a direct path to permanent residency unless you have something that would prevent you from making the adjustment of status from getting your green card. That's something that I would recommend that you maybe talk with an immigration attorney or take a look at. There's some millions of blogs devoted to this, although I will say take any information you get from an immigration blog with huge grains of salt, like entire canisters of salt, because I see a lot of people advise and they don't have any expertise other than the fact that they once went through a process on their own, and so their experience doesn't necessarily translate to your situation. But if you're married to a U.S. citizen and you apply for the permanent residency, a green card through a U.S. citizen spouse, then you have a direct ability to apply for work authorization based on that pending green card. And then, of course, ultimately, the permanent residency itself is, you know, it's proof of work authorization. So, but that doesn't always apply to everybody, but it is a situation that comes up. Many people come for a degree program, they meet the love of their life, and they get married. It happens. The question about obtaining work after graduation, again, OPT, don't think of OPT as like the end of everything. OPT it's practical training. You're going to get some work experience in your field. It may bridge you to work sponsorship under an H-1B or other work authorization through your employer, or it may be just some great training and experience that you can use to build your resume so that you can land that great job back in your home country. A lot of people think of students as never leaving the US, and that's not true. Most F1 international students ultimately go back home, but that practical training, that experience they get in the industry in a US-based job really helps them land like that great career opportunity back in their home country. I've had many students who get a little bit of experience and with major, global corporations, and they say, you know what, we want to put you as management at our overseas location because we worked with you for the last year and we know that you're very dependable. So anyway, yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you. Can you explain more about the changes in H-1B visa? If my major is advertising, can I work as a graphic designer?
So yeah, that and I'm guessing there were two major changes that happened this month. It's literally 21 days old now. It's 3 weeks ago on October 8th. The two changes were the Department of Labor changed how they calculate prevailing wages, and that's really caused a lot of chaos, and a lot of people are really worried about that. And then there is separately a proposed rule that will go into effect in December. It is something that where Homeland Security basically has really narrowed the definition of what qualifies for a job under H-1B. So an H-1B, the letter acronym and everything, it is a specialty occupation visa. What it means is that the job you apply for, to be able to sponsor you, the job must require a minimum of a bachelor's degree, and you must hold that minimum degree. So both the job requires it and you hold that degree. But beyond that, the new rules also state that it has to be, and really clarifies that it has to be in a specialty degree field. So the job can't just require a bachelor's degree, it has to require a bachelor's degree in a specific subset of fields. So if it is a graphic design position, it has to be a minimum of a bachelor's degree in graphic design or art or related degree in order for you to qualify that job as an H-1B occupation. You also have to hold that degree in order to be sponsored. And further, it has to be the norm for the industry, or at least the norm for that business. What that means is, now your employer may say, this job for graphic design, we require a bachelor's degree in graphic design, and you have that bachelor's degree or higher in graphic design. Sounds great. But if the industry norm is no graphic design degree is required to take a job in graphic design, just the experience is required, that is the norm for the industry, then it may be a greater challenge to sponsor somebody for an H-1B. We have experienced that for the last several years with IT specialties, because so often they allow you to substitute experience for a degree. And that may be the case with a graphic design position too. So the new rules really do make it a lot more challenging to sponsor H-1Bs in what we would consider like staff positions that do allow that substituting of experience. It's not to say that it's impossible. It's just to say that there's a greater challenge. Having said all of that, the rule proposal for that change that came out on October 8th and that will go into effect on December 7th is still open to comments. Many employers, both private sector and at the university level, have been making comments, and there are multiple lawsuits challenging these changes to both prevailing wage and the H-1B rule changes. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce has filed a lawsuit. That's telling you a lot. Every major corporation is filing lawsuits because they're basically saying we will not be able to fill our talent needs, our employment needs, without the existing H-1B rules staying in effect. These changes may make it impossible for us to fill the gaps. So take everything that I've said with the understanding that it's not all doom and gloom. there may be changes, but there may not be any change. You know, really what you need to do is just look for the job and hopefully connect with somebody. And if they're willing to sponsor you, they can explore those opportunities through their, hopefully they have immigration counsel and retainer, or work through an attorney that can help guide that process.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll still have a lot of questions that we want to go through. Well, the next one is for co-op. I heard that co-op is only for students in engineering program. Is it true? Is it hard for international students graduate to get work opportunity? Does being an international student hurt the chance of getting into co-op program?
I'll speak to that really quickly. So with regard to admittance to the co-op program, you know, being an international student is not going to affect admission. It's simply, we are looking for the criteria with, you know, GPA and hours completed. Like I mentioned, each company is going to have, you know, their own work authorization policies. So we pay attention to those and help, you know, students go through that search process of finding a company that, you know, would be hopefully willing to work through that process. And we are open to all majors. So actually about 20% of our students are non-engineering students, just to give you an idea.
Terrific, that's great to know.
And, you know, to piggyback off of that, one part of your question was about graduate. We do work with both undergraduate and graduate students. For the co-op program, an undergraduate student does have to meet the 3-semester requirement. For a graduate student, there's only a 1-semester requirement. So that is a little bit of a difference there if you're undergrad versus graduate. And again, as Neil said, a lot of that would be based on the company requirements, if they're willing to accept a graduate student, because many of the employers do come to us for the 3-semester traditional co-op. We have to ask the employers if they're willing to work with a 1-semester graduate student. And then also any work authorization requirements that they may have as well. So just know that that is an option. And to really impress this point, when we have recruiting events, students can certainly come to us at any given point with an offer that we can help them facilitate so that they can accept an offer and be able to apply under their CPT if they have been linked to an employer that allows F1 visa.
And I work with a lot of students who are in co-op and get help from Amy, and we'll work together to get the student get CPT work authorization to take the position. So yeah, that's terrific. There's a question in the chat that I think a lot of students will have the same want to ask about. Is about the range of salary expectation. Should I enter a higher or a lower salary expectation? How does this question affect during salary negotiation, and does it affect the selection process?
Should I handle that one? Okay, that was a multifaceted question, so if I miss anything, y'all tell me. When they ask, my assumption is we're talking about the application salary question. How much, what's your expected salary? Okay. You want to try to enter words. You know, you don't want to enter, like, one of my big salary rules is just try not to be the first one to put a figure out there. So if the application is set up to where you can enter a words, put negotiable, put discuss at interview. That's not always the case. We all know that. And in that case, I would recommend doing your best research to find what comparable positions in that same city are paying and putting on the lower end of what your research shows you. Now, I will say, because I think this was part of the question too, an application is not a contract. It's not a signing letter. and it's not agreeing you to accept that salary no matter what. You can always find out, and often do find out, a lot more information throughout your interview and through the questioning you do, even the touring, and that's going to shed a lot of light on what the job really is about and what a fair rate to be paid would be. And so it's totally acceptable for you to say, now that I know more about the position, this is what I had in mind. So did that answer all the parts of that question? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, I think you addressed all of the questions. Well, this question is probably for Charter. How to approach an employer for visa sponsorship before or after getting the job offer? If I wait until after I receive the job offer, how long should I work or wait before bringing it up to the employer? I know this is like,
it's a tough one, and I think Amy Ratliff or Amy Brownlee could probably also address this. I would say it's a question we have up front. And if the employer knows their stuff, they're going to ask that question before you, before you get to broach that topic. And that's part of that whole question that they have in the application. Will you require sponsorship in the future, now or in the future? It's to have that conversation. It's not meant to, in a proper human resources context, it's to have a conversation about it, not to disqualify you. And that's what you have to understand about human resources professionals. They ask those questions on those applications so they get to know more about you as an applicant, not to say, oh, we want to reject this guy. It's really about like, okay, what conversations do we need to have because he has the qualifications we want, or she has everything that we need in this position. Now let's have the further conversation. I would say being as upfront as possible, early on is a good idea. I can tell you, I've done H-1Bs and work-related visas since 2005, so that's 15 years. And early on, I had people that were on OPT that would wait until the last month of their OPT to tell their employer, hey, you know what? My work authorization actually ends in a few weeks. Can you sponsor my H-1B? And that is not the time to have that conversation, because that means you're going to be without work for a little while and your employer is going to be without their employee for a little while. So having that conversation up front is a good idea, especially if you're working in the private sector. And the reason why I say that is I talk about H-1Bs, and somebody asked this in the chat. Academic H-1Bs, as a university, I can file an H-1B anytime during the year. If you started with us on January 1st, if on January 15th I needed to transition you from your OPT to H-1B, I can file it. Great, no problem. However, in the private sector, they are subject to what's called the cap. They can only file for H-1Bs on April 1st to have them begin on October 1st. Because October 1st is the beginning of the federal fiscal year. And because of this, that really limits their window for sponsorship. And if you're a May graduate and you're not STEM eligible, you need to have them preparing to file that H-1B the next April so that you can potentially have a cap gap OPT extension and be able to continue your work without interruption. They have one shot. If you're on STEM OPT, they have 3 shots. They have the first year and then each of the subsequent 2 years during the extension. So you really want to have that conversation early on so that they have as many opportunities possible to qualify under that cap subject H-1B sponsorship. And so that if they say, you know, we're just not going to do this, you have the opportunity to find other work.
You know, I was going to piggyback off of that as well. I'd like to take the opportunity to tell students that this is a big part of professional development, and that is expressing through communication skills. about, you know, in an interview, often we think that the company or the employer is interviewing us, but it's actually a two-sided process. You are interviewing the company as well. So it's about matching and making that right fit for both parties. It's not a one-sided avenue. So I encourage you to really, you know, have that thought process, think about how you can communicate. And Amy Bramlett made a big point earlier, and that was anytime you can have some face-to-face time, whether that's networking, in-person events, so that you can have that opportunity to connect, that human interaction, that allows you an open space to have that dialogue. So I encourage you to do that. While we're in a virtual environment right now and we're forced to do a lot of things online, when we have those, when we're relaxed a little bit more, I encourage you to get out, network, be in front of employers and have those conversations and use that as a professional growth opportunity as well.
Thank you both for like answering the questions. It's like very, very helpful. We have about 4 minutes left, and I'm trying to see, you know, like some questions probably a lot of students would be interested about. What is the best way to gain access to hiring managers at companies that don't participate in UA's career events or generally don't recruit often from Alabama? What are some strategies to approach recruiters on social networks such as LinkedIn?
We have a vast network of alumni at lots of companies. So to me, that's a great inroad, is to, you know, see if we have any alum at that company and try to touch base with them. There's an alumni tool in LinkedIn, and that might be a great way to visualize what alum we have. You can additionally, you know, if you have a city in mind, reach out to the Alumni Association president in that city. You can find that on the alumni.ua.edu website. That's one way. Would anybody, Amy or Neil, have anything to add?
I was just going to say, definitely lean back on your college or department, because many of, like for the instance, the College of Engineering has an alumni network. And so that's really, be alert to those events that the college may be hosting, whatever college you're in, for you to network with those individuals, because you may find someone that may not be at a manager level, but they may be a connection with a particular company that you're interested in. And once you have that connection, then they're going to be the kind of the conduit that's going to allow you a connection with that particular person that may be in HR or recruiting. So take advantage of things that your college is offering in relationship to networking with alums.
I'll add really quickly. It's definitely, you know, appropriate to try and reach out to companies, alumni, you know, via LinkedIn and those channels. Just make sure you're doing your research prior to reaching out. You don't want to simply send a message that says, "Hey, I'd love a job with your company." You want to do a little bit of research that, you know, is going to show how your skill set applies to maybe the particular roles that the company has, and that's going to serve you, you know, much better. You'll hope, you know, I think that would be much better received than, you know, just a simple "I need a job." So think about how you're reaching out to people via those channels, and how you can present yourself concisely and graciously, and show that you're doing your research on the jobs that the company has.
Well, we are nearly at the end. I know we didn't answer all the questions, and in the chat box, Bethany posted a lot of our email contacts, and we're very, very thankful to have the Career Center and Co-op office here to talk about these opportunities. And I really want to stress how much we value them as resources for the international student community and for the entire UA community. We always have been very proud to see that UA thinks of all students as their students. And so please do take advantage of their resources and their support. And if y'all have any questions, at least, and need some pointers or feedback or anything, feel free to drop us a line here at the International Student Scholar Services Office. We're always happy to help. And then, you know, if it's something that we can't answer, we're going to definitely try to get you guys over into the right hands. So, anyway, Trong, do you want to add anything to wrap it all up? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. Well, just like Charter said, there are still a lot of questions that we didn't have time to get into. I thank all of our partners who take the time to come here and help our students with the questions that they have, and we really appreciate you, and we encourage students who have specific questions to contact us. And with that, I think we'll want to wrap up our Q&A session today, and I will follow up with a handout that will be sent to you all shortly, and also a little survey to see what other issues that you would like us to cover in the next session.
Yes, and we hope to do this again. So that's
if
we can get Co-op and Career Center to do this again.
We would be happy to join in, and thank you for partnering with us. I mean, we all are here to help the students be successful, and I think I could speak on behalf of Amy and Neil and the Career Center and the Co-op program. Whatever we can do to support you so that we can support our students, we're happy and open to do that. So just let us know how we can support and help.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great Thursday. Bye.